for our great-great-great-grandchildren to review. And that young woman that came on first, I just want to salute you. You reminded me of my granddaughters, just listening to you talk. And I was so impressed with you. So I just want to say that it's about, we need to work just like Stacey Abrams has taught, and that educate each person, each educational system, so that they can put things in there. I have some very good white Caucasian friends, and they say, well, I didn't know this and I didn't know that. I didn't grow up learning this. We didn't talk about this in the house. These things were not discussed. So when you have people that are not educated in a certain area and you're trying to create synergy, it is handicapped to a certain degree. For example, one of the things that had impacted me as a Muslim woman, I never really had anybody say anything really disrespectful, but most of the questions that I would get were concerning my dress.
Okay.
I would be asked, well, why do you wear this scarf on your head? Or why is your dress below your knees? Or why is the sleeves on you? Why all this? You're all covered up, and it'd be June or July or August here in Georgia, and I've got on all these clothes. And so I would just smile and say, well, if you go to the desert, there's a reason people are covered up there, because they don't want the sand and the heat to get in there.
Right.
But the Islamic reason for it is because our tradition teaches us in the Quran that women are voluptuous and beautiful, and men have problems with that. And so the best way to help men to focus on what they're doing is not to portray your body in front of them. So this is the Quran reason behind that. But to those who are perpetrators and instigators and agent provocateurs, switch that around and turn it into something ugly and say that women are oppressed and these other kinds of things. So this is, when we begin to start educating and put education of other cultures and other peoples, where they come from and things like that, then when we meet each other out in the street or meet each other at the bank or meet each other on the job, then we can think of the things that we learned about them.
Right. And
I learned country music. My mother brought us up, and she played country western. I've been knowing about. I was country before country was cool.
Well, that's okay.
You remember that song?
I remember. Listen, we had a great conversation also, and I wanted the listen audience to hear this conversation. And this conversation was about your headdress. And so, and I know you said a lot of times people, your hijab, and a lot of times people don't understand. And so this one great story that you shared with me about work and your how it tied into your religious beliefs of that you had to put, to cover yourself. You had to cover.
Yes.
So if you can kind of share that with us, because I wanted to look at things in terms of people they're going through all type of things, and we don't know how it affects people. Like, I wanted to tell people about John, this man's name, he's of Muslim faith, and his name is Joseph Doe, and his family reunited after the court rejects the refugee ban. So the refugee Joseph Doe plaintiff in Doe versus Trump, an ACLU lawsuit challenging the Trump administration's Muslim ban, was finally able to hug his wife. It's not about it's about what this man went through. And I want you guys to hear this part. This man was finally able to hug his wife and 3 children, ending in 4 years of separation. The family was united at SeaTac Airport after a federal court ruled and granted a nationwide injunction against the ban that would have indefinitely prevented children and spouses from any country from rejoining refugees like Doe who've already been admitted to the United States. He states he was overjoyed to see his wife and children and to be together as a family again. I'm so grateful that the judge recognized my right to have my family join me here in the United States. There's a precedent on that actual case. And this was an African-American Muslim. Well, he was a black Muslim. His skin tone So I don't really know exactly what his complete nationality was. But when we make decisions and we do things, we don't know how it affects the next person, or we have to create the narrative that we need to have more sensitivity to what other people are going through and how they're being impacted based on decisions, especially our own decisions. And you were impacted also because of your religious belief, and also the way that you have to dress is what you were explaining. And this is something you chose to do. It was chosen. You chose to do this out of what your belief system is this is what you should do. And so I wanted to know if you would share that story about your hijab.
Sure. I worked at one of the companies connected to the Hartsfield-Jackson Airport here in Atlanta. And when I first went in for orientation and they saw my head, the administrator saw my head, the human resources saw that my head was covered with a scarf. They didn't have a name for it. The fact that I had on the scarf came under the instructions of the do's and the don'ts, and it had head scarves, wraps, hats. There was a whole list of different things. So there's nothing wrong with what they were doing. They were just following their protocol based on the human resources guidelines. And so they told me that, well, Ms. Kaufman, you'll have to take off your scarf to work here and so forth. And so I said, well, I really don't want to do that, and I would like to sit down and explain to you why. So after I got through explaining to her why that was part of my religion, I was Muslim and so forth, then she said, well, let me talk to my boss, and apparently she liked the way I explained it to her because she didn't know. She had any animosity. She didn't know me.
Right.
And I presented myself as, a conscientious adult, and I took time to explain it to her. Next thing I knew, they called me back in the office and said, you can wear your scarf because it's religion, and we put that down on the religion so that way you'll have your badge on and nobody will interfere with you or bother you or try to stop you from coming in or going out. So that was, a positive experience, and sometimes you just have to tell people exactly the reasons behind if you so choose to. Some people don't, but since I'm older, I don't mind taking the time. And then another thing, to show you how growth and development spreads when you explain things, I'm a member of the senior citizen community here, and I like to swim, but I have a Muslim woman's swim outfit. We have something, if you've seen those scuba divers with that plastic, that suit that covers from neck to ankles, and then they put on their flippers and their goggles and go underwater. Well, that's Islamic women's swim attire with the same kind of material, only just a little bit more feminine looking. Well, in some countries, that's against the law. A Muslim woman cannot go down to the beach wearing all that long stuff, but yet a man can put that long stuff on and go scuba diving. See, that's poor education, because what happens is, what they're saying is, now as long as you have on a bikini, you're cool. But if you wear on something to cover all that up, you're creating a problem. And see, it's this kind of miseducation. There's a book by Carter G. Woodson, volumes 1, 2, and 3, called The Miseducation of the Negro, which really talks about that kind of miseducation within our community. But there's a global miseducation as well, because it's the big I's and the little U's. So I think the root of the matter is to get back to educating all cultures. When we get back to school, we'll have Native Americans, we'll have Hispanics, we'll have Caucasians, we'll have African Americans, and other immigrants coming to school.
Right.
The curriculum needs to be revised. And it's going to take time. You can't do it all at once. It costs millions of dollars. But the teachers that are coming through now, like my granddaughters, they're all educators, and my grandson's educator. And they say, Grandma, we have a style when we were talking because we have multinational students.
That's right.
In our classrooms. And so when they're teaching, they're conscious of that, because when they were coming up, I was talking to them a certain way. Right. So this is where I think what you're talking about, Debbie, this seeing other people in the light of being a human. Mm-hmm. And that's what each of you saying. The other lady that's a baby boomer, the millennial lady that said the same thing, seeing people in the light of their humanity. That's what works.
Sometimes you have to meet people where they are, not where you want them to be. Simple. And I agree with you 100%. And I want to share something with you about race and ethnicity in the United States, where we've come. If I want to say this. Hopefully, Martin Luther King Jr. hears me today, and I want to share something from the Census Bureau. It says the most recent United States Census officially recognizes 5 racial categories: white, American, black or African American, American Indian, Alaska Native, Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and other Pacific Islanders, as well as people of 2 or more races. The Census Bureau also classified respondents as Hispanic or Latina, or not Hispanic or Latino, identifying Hispanic and Latino as an ethnicity, not a race, which compromises the largest group in the nation. The United States Supreme Court unanimously held that race is not limited to census designation on the race question, but extends to all ethnicities and thus can include Jewish, Arab, Italian, Hungarian, Laotian, and Zulu, etc. The census also asks an ancestry question, which covers the broader notion of ethnicity. In the 2000 census alone from the alone in the American Community Survey, the questions will return again, and they returned again in the 2020 census, and they were not removed from that census. And so if we look at where we've come, if you look at the census in the 60s, it's much different today than it was then. And so we're moving, and we may not be moving as fast as other people may want us to, but the point is that the point has been well taken, and it's been noted, and people are trying to make a difference in what is going on. And it takes people being open and honest, like our brave panelists, to be able to share and talk about, how things are impacting them. And to understand, when we see another Caucasian woman on the street, we don't have to just say, oh, she's prejudiced. Well, there's a lot of prejudice. It just doesn't have to be against a race of people. You can be prejudiced about the way I wear my hair. You can be prejudiced about the clothes I have on. You can be prejudiced because you don't like the car I'm driving. You could hate that company of that car and be prejudiced against the makers of that car. There's a lot of different ways, but we have to now be more cognizant of how we actually interact and stop judging everyone and feeling like everybody belongs in a class, like the class of people. I had a couple of people say to me, and that was the reason why I went and looked at the Black Lives Matter marches all over the world, because I wanted to bring that to the forefront. And I told a person, they said, well, all these things that are going on, we're going to have to get our guns and, and I said, wait a minute, hold on. They can come and they can this. I said, let me say something to you. Just slow that down, because you're on the other side of the aisle. And if you start saying they and them and us and we, and if you start saying that, then you're taking away all of the progress that has been made. Because when Black Lives Matter, when those people were in the street, it was some of everybody in the street that made up the world. So we have to stop saying those things. And because none of us are superior, we're human beings. God forbid, and this is going to be the last part in the podcast. And I started thinking, God forbid, if I hope no one thinks I sound crazy, but it's just a point I'm trying to make. We have enough going on with COVID. And it's touching people all over the world. COVID doesn't know any race, any ethnicity. They don't know. COVID knows nothing. It just knows I'm a disease and I'm killing people. That's what it knows. Now, take that away and say if we had aliens that came down in another life form, and that other life form started killing everything that was human, and the next thing you know, you're in a hole with a Asian person, you're in that hole with a Hispanic person, a Russian person, maybe it's a whole bunch of different people from all walks of life trying to survive in this one cave or something, and knowing that the human race will be over, say it's 5 or 6 people. Are you going to tell me those people going to be in the cage are they going to be in this cave being prejudiced, or are they going to be in this cage trying to understand we need each other to survive? We